Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So what I'll do today, I will explain to you a little bit about the Salesforce query plan. Now, obviously, this is a Salesforce data architect certification, which means data is a prime actor in this certification journey. And we often come across, I mean, when I say we, as a Salesforce professional, we often have dealt with large data volume, and there are times where we have to write complex SQL queries to drive the outcome, right? But that being said, it's very important that we should take proper care when it comes to writing a proper query. As sometimes we are not sure whether this is the right query or this is the wrong query. So that's one of the way, and that really plays a very important role, right? Because I personally remember, one of the projects when I worked with. There was an issue when someone built a flow to do certain operation, and it was querying an account table. An account table had almost like 5 million records, and that flow was horrendously slow. The flow was horrendously slow, right? And there was a lot of things that needs to fine tune. So we decided to migrate to Apex code, and plus then someone wrote a so-called query, which was as bad as someone writing a flow. So that's why it's very important. You should pay very close attention to the query plan. And now in Salesforce, you have out-of-box query plan um, tools, which will help you identify the best query to write. So I'll give you a very simple example, and it will hopefully becomes much clear. So the way to test that, you obviously need to go to the developer console, and so once you are in the developer console, so we'll take you something like this. So, so first thing first, right? I will close all. You need to go to help, and you need to go to preference. And in the preference, there is something called enable query plan. Just turn it off, turn it on. Sorry, it will be off by default. So it's a tick box. Just tick it off. Then you will see the query plan here. Now let me run a very simple query here. Okay. So you see select ID from login history, right? So it returns me an ID from a login history without any filter condition. That means there's no index, right? It did an entire table scan. And if you have done any kind of a SQL operation in Oracle or SQL Server, you know that right, table scan is not really great because it's going to scan the entire rows, right? And if your table contains approximately, let's say, millions of records, then it's going to scan the entire record set, and which is not really great in terms of performance. So if you look at the query plan here, I'll show you that it has a table scan, which is cost is 2.8813, which is pretty bad. Now, if I add, let's say maybe you if you really want to look for entire login history, sure, it makes sense. But in most of the scenarios, we often deals with you might be after a certain record or based on certain criteria. So you often end up writing with where clause, right? So if I do here the login time, say I wanted to look for a login history with a login time. I don't know if there's a name object. Let's say and where login time the last number of days is 30, right? So if I had a filter here, I'm sorry, it doesn't have a name. That's all right. So let me filter this out. So we will get 57 records. And now if you look at the query plan, now you must be wondering, it still shows table scan, right? So that's because this query plan will give you all the possible operation it can take. But what it will do, it will actually pick up the one with the least cost. In this case, it will pick up this 1.76 because it will not be running using the table scan. It just gives you a possibility. It can different possibility that can happen, right? So in this case, it perfectly executed the first one. So yeah. Now let me give you another example. I have some lots of queries written. Now, you must be wondering why this is important for a data architect certification. Well, from an exam perspective, you may not really need to know about it, but if you're a data architect, right, data is your responsibility, which means the performance tuning, fine tuning, extracting, retrieval, everything becomes your responsibility, right? And if someone comes to you and say, "Hey, why my queries are running at a very slower pace," and you wanted to identify what's actually going wrong, then you can leverage query plan on a developer console to say, "Hey, whether it's going through table scan or if it's any index that's getting used, because index can speed up your retrieval time." So you just need to make sure that you have access to the tool, or at least have a good understanding of what tools you can use, right? So if I run this one, I get like around 4 rows, right? And if I look at the query plan, so I have, so here the table scan is the cheapest one, so it will run the table scan, right? Because it's 0.8883, the cost is, it always picks up the lowest cost, right? And you must be thinking, but the table scan is not really great. Yeah, because um, we have very limited records here. Now you must be wondering, what is this S subject cardinality? So that means it's actually scanned entire 21 records. Now let me show you what I meant by that. So if you look at your account, select the ID from account, you can see that you only got 24 rows. So it's pretty much did a complete 21 record scan. And apparently, um, from a query plan, it seems like that was the cheapest one. So if I go back and run this again, so cost is 0.8833. Now let's tweak a query a little bit and let's see what happens, right? So what I've done, I've added the timestamp, just to filter it out a little bit more, um, to see if you see any impact, right? Okay, so we still got the same record, but in this case, it didn't make any difference, right? Because we are actually doing a table scan on account. Now, if I do something like this, right? Um, we still got the same rows, but if you look at a query plan, you see the difference here. Now, the difference is um, we have added the timestamp, and but the cost is horrible, so it will still run the table scan, right? Like I said, it'll always look for the cheapest one. And so this is how you normally do a query tuning. Now, obviously, if you're not a database expert or if you're not dealing with much with the database stuff, you perhaps won't care. And also, you must be thinking, hey, it's a SaaS product, right? Why do I really care? Well, you should, because sometimes, performance uh, of an application really depends on the way you are fetching the data from a database. So it's very good. It's good to know. And from an exam point of view, you may get a question around a query plan, right? So yeah, it's good to know, and especially if you're a Salesforce data architect. Let's do a couple more examples. So if I do this, I know this sounds quite simple, but it's a part of certification, so I might as well cover it. So if I run this, um, oh yeah, you cannot do the description in the filter call. Sorry, that was my mistake. That was not the example I was wanted to run. Sorry, this one I was looking after. So it's an ID from contact, but email like, which probably doesn't exist. Now you have an index because it's an email, and you have a table scan, right? So it probably would have run the first one. which is pretty good. Um, Now, the same result. Now you have different, you have a create date, you have all of the stuff, right? So I always look for so others you see quite expensive. So since it doesn't return any result, so you can see the query plan, right? So that's a very simple thing, and I know that, it's a quite nice little handy feature to have, and especially if you're dealing with the so-called queries, right? Just go through the query plan, understand the query, it will give you a pretty good understanding. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover in this episode. Hope you guys have an amazing Sunday. Adios.